The Oklahoma Business Show is proudly sponsored by Your IT. Visit yourit.com to learn more about our services and schedule a chat to find out how we can help you. That's yourit.com. You deserve better IT.
I'm Chris Mraz, and welcome to the Oklahoma Business Show, where we speak with business owners and leaders about their struggles, successes, and things they've learned along the way. All right, welcome back, everyone. Delighted to have you join us. We are here today with Linda Wesley. Linda, thank you so much. Linda is the owner of StoryPath Communications, a strategic communications company for small businesses and nonprofits, a dog lover, yes, and a craft beer snob.
True.
Why don't you kick us off and do a little better intro than what I just did?
Sure. My name's Linda Wesley, and I am owner of StoryPath Communications, which I started in 2014. My focus is helping small businesses and nonprofits be more strategic about how they communicate. And that can mean anything from communication strategy development and really putting a plan together to helping them with consistent content for social media, for blogs. Pretty much if it touches words or strategy, it's my thing.
Okay, awesome. I want to start off with a differentiator. We hear marketing company a lot. It's kind of become a catch-all for pretty any sort of business communications. But there's a really big difference and distinction between marketing, digital marketing, communications, PR, web development, SEO, et cetera, et cetera. So where does StoryPath fit into the overall marketing strategy for companies?
Sure. So I chose the word communications very intentionally. So you have advertising, you have marketing, you have public relations, you have all of these things. There's a lot of debate in the industry about the semantics around it. Different people perceive different things about those different words. But I chose communications because it really is about every aspect of communications. And so it's the words you put on paper. It's the words that come out of your mouth. It's the image you put forward for your company. And I feel like communications really encompasses all of those pieces. But then I really do focus in on a lot of the written piece of it. Okay. That's really, and small businesses and nonprofits. And that's my big focus. The reason I started my business and the reason I focus on small businesses, small nonprofits was that I knew that in this market, there really wasn't a lot of strategic support for those organizations at a price point they could afford. We have some phenomenal large agencies. Sure. But with phenomenal large agencies, sometimes comes the requirement of a larger budget. And I wanted to be able to help really small businesses, really small nonprofits have some strategy support, have some implementation support, and be able to afford that long term.
Awesome. Yeah. With that need, as you begin working with a company, do you sit down and try to determine how much help they need, or where's the main focus? Because obviously, if they decide to go all in with, a whole redo of what they're doing, there's different. So, kind of what's your process as you start working with a company?
It's a great question. First, I really want to find out what are their goals and who is their audience. And what are they trying to accomplish? Where's their pain? What's going on? Sometimes, really often, a company will call me and they think they need one thing. And then as we dive into it and we start talking, we discover they actually need something else. I know that's something you run into in technology world
never.
a lot.
No.
Never. And so it really is about why are they reaching out? What are they trying to accomplish? On the nonprofit side, obviously, it's a lot of times trying to raise money. Raise awareness, get a message out to the public. Maybe they have resources to offer. They have experts to offer. So those are the reasons behind why they're reaching out. And then it becomes, okay, who are you trying to reach? What have you tried? That's one of my most important questions is what have you done in the past and what worked and what didn't work and why? And so dig into that. And really my communication strategy development offering gets very detailed in that, in audience and goals, in channels. But any client I talk to, regardless of the amount of service, whether I'm writing something for a brochure or if I'm doing the full scope and doing a communications plan and the full implementation, it always starts with who's your audience? What are your goals? What are we trying to do? And how can I help?
Yeah. Good communication always has to have a good story, a lot of emotion typically to draw people in. As you're talking to a company, obviously dealing with nonprofits, there's usually emotion in their mission.
Sure.
How do you, I guess just learn from them and hear their story and then work to capture that emotion? I'm always curious how, like, it's not your story, but you're telling someone else's story.
Yeah. A lot of questions, a lot of listening, and as much as I can, seeing it in action, especially with nonprofits. Being able to maybe go out and spend a day and hear what they're doing, or maybe I go to a board meeting and it's really a discovery focus and we talk about what are they doing in the community and tell me about the impact. And, I love to ask nonprofit board members, like, why are you here? And tell me one of the most memorable things you've ever experienced with this organization. And people who are volunteering for a nonprofit, working for a nonprofit, they have those stories and they're happy to share them. I certainly find that on the nonprofit side. Sometimes it's a little harder to get a small business owner to talk about that emotion, talk about, some are really passionate and vocal about their why. Others, are a little more shy and they don't really want to be the focus in the forefront and they don't want to be out there in front of their brand. But if you put that human face and that human story, even to a small business, you can connect with people in a different way.
That's interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but 100%. Any story about a time that you got like kind of caught up in that emotion and
oh gosh.
I mean, you're hearing all these incredible stories and I know, journalism degree, right?
Yes.
From Mizzou.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. So you were taught, I'm sure in journalism to keep emotions at bay and just get the story. But when you're dealing with these, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe
no. I know that it happens. I'm a crier anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a sensitive soul. So yes, I've absolutely cried with clients as they're telling me stories, but none of them are coming to mind right this minute. So I'm like, oh man, I know it's happened, but I don't.
Like I'm putting you on the spot.
But I don't know. Right. I'm sure one's going to come to me as I walk out the door of oh, there was that time. But
perfect. We'll run back in.
Right. But no, they really are. I've worked with nonprofits that are making such a difference and are doing such great work. And the same with small businesses, because there's that heart and passion for why a lot of small business owners are doing what they're doing too.
So when you're talking to an organization, is it easier or harder if they have something to kind of start off with? I guess what I'm asking, is it easier or harder to tweak what's already there, or for you just to get the details and start from scratch?
I enjoy having something to reference about their story, about who they are, about what they do. It doesn't mean I have to by any means, but it is nice if they have something already in place, and maybe it's something that just an all volunteer board put up on the web, using a template. I've worked with a lot of nonprofits actually like that, where, okay, we started, we didn't have any budget. We just threw this thing together with a WYSIWYG type, web editor and here's what we have and how do we make it better? So I love to start from something, but I've also then worked with organizations that have that blank page, as long as they know their why. It's harder, obviously, to work with an organization that has a mission, but maybe can't articulate it yet because they're so new, or they're still sort of figuring out where do they fit in their space. And then you have to ask just a whole bunch more probing questions around kind of pulling that story out, pulling out that why. It's the difference if you ask, okay, why are we here? Or why did you start your organization? Why does this organization exist? And if somebody gives you a one-sentence answer, that's different than if somebody says, oh, let me tell you. And, and they dive right into that emotion and that story and that connection. So, but that's part of my job, is asking the right questions to get to the heart of the issue and to be able to tell their story for them.
Degree in journalism. Did you see yourself going into this type of field, or was there another path you started down originally?
So I always knew I was going to be a writer.
Okay.
My mom tells this story. She tells it today, still, about when I was a kid, and I always was happiest if I had a pen or a pencil in my hand. So if there was something to be written, I wanted to write it. And so my mom tells this story where like I was 4 and going grocery shopping, but I wanted to write the grocery list. So she had to spell every word on the whole grocery list for her very strong-willed 4-year-old to write the grocery list. And then I had to check it off as we went. So we always knew I was going to be a writer of some kind. That goes way back. But I knew when I went into journalism that I didn't want to just work a singular piece of the journalism puzzle. So I didn't want to only be a copy editor. Copy editors are amazing. They're very important people, but I knew I didn't want to do that. So I knew when I went even into journalism that I wanted to focus more in marketing. And I wanted to work in roles where I got to do a little bit of everything. And so that was my focus. So my degree is in magazine journalism, a lot of writing and editing background. I took electives in strategic communications, also sometimes called advertising. I also threw in an extra degree in religious studies just for fun. Some little fun fact. I was like, okay, I'll just get another degree because I can. So I always knew I wanted to have that variety in what I did. And then I also always knew I would be a business owner. I didn't know when, but I come from a long line of business owners, and I knew that eventually that was going to be where I landed. So I finally did.
Was it just like a gut feeling or just something you how did you know?
I can't say I knew when I was 10, but by the time I was in high school, I knew that someday I'd own my own business. Okay. My grandparents owned a funeral home in Western Oklahoma. My dad started his civil engineering firm when I was in high school. Both of my brothers ran their own businesses at one time or another, one in IT, one in auto mechanics. So I just knew really by the time I started my career that eventually that was going to be the route I took. So just finally, things lined up and that was the path I took. And I still use my degree every day, obviously, because I do a lot of writing and editing. So that journalism degree comes in handy. And then, of course, just all the on-the-job training you learn when you start your first, real job, and you learn how things work in the real world and not just from your degree.
Yeah. So I imagine you would have had to seen the highs and lows and the joy and pain and struggles business owners go through. And you still said, that looks fun. I'll do that.
I did.
And then you got in and realized the same thing. Can you think of maybe a particular challenge or a costly mistake that has happened that you learned from?
I think, one of the, biggest lessons I've learned is that it's constant evolution and constant change in business. One of the things I definitely knew going in is that while owning your own business does come with a degree of flexibility, it also comes with a lot of really long hours. And I knew that from watching my dad start a civil engineering company. And so I knew going into owning my own business, okay, there's a lot of work ahead of me. Yeah. There's a lot of lean months when you start because you have to build a clientele and get your name out there and make those connections. But so I knew that balance was going to be important to me. And I have worked really hard over the years of my business to sort of ebb and flow that. There have been times that work and business sort of took over life a little bit. And then you just have to say, okay, I'm at this point where my stress level is really high. I love what I do. I don't want to abandon what I do, but how do I get some better balance? How do I bring my stress down? How do I make sure that I'm doing the work I love while also living the life I love? Yeah. And so I think that's one of my biggest lessons is just know that it, like so many things in life, there's a pendulum swing and it goes one direction and then the other direction. And you just keep navigating that balance. I will also say another big lesson I've learned, and this is one of the things I like to tell anybody starting a new business if they're like, oh, what would you say? to somebody who's new, is build on a strong foundation, have some systems and some processes in place, because it's really easy to push systems and processes to the back burner. Yeah. And then one day you wake up and you realize that you've grown to the point that you don't have the time to put them in place. And now you're scrambling and you're struggling because you don't have that foundation to build on. So systems and processes had been a big journey for me at one point in time to really create that structure that then would let me scale in a different way.
Yeah. And were those systems and processes for you? Were they for staff? I know sometimes when people are putting those in place, when they realize they need them, is when they go to make their first hire and realize they don't have anything to tell this person how to do their job. Is that something you came across, or what was it that kind of made you realize you needed them?
It was for me. So I don't have employees, but I do have a team of freelancers. Okay. And so I've stayed intentionally small because I want my overhead to be low. I want to stay affordable for the clients that I'm trying to serve. And so I've kept my overhead low and have not hired employees. And in the near future, I don't have a plan to hire employees either, but I have a fantastic virtual assistant. And then I have a team of freelance writers and editors that help with content creation. But it really was someone else is going to do something that's in my head. Or automations, CRM system, things like that, even that would allow me more time to focus on client relationships, more time to focus on business development. If I could automate some of those tasks, if I could get some of those systems in place. So twofold really. Yes, some of it was, I need to train my assistant how to do things I've to this point been doing. But then also, how do I just leverage tools that are out there to give myself a little more time in the day?
Putting those policies, procedures, those standard operating procedures in place, pretty self-explanatory. Any cool automations or specific things you've done with your CRM and your tools that have really been key? Because those are some of the things people have a hard time thinking through. Well, what can I do to save me some time?
I think when I shifted to using a project management tool, so my team uses ClickUp. Okay. There's a lot of them out there. Asana, Monday, you name it. ClickUp is the one that worked with my brain and was visually appealing, which was important to me. I don't like a lot of clutter in the tools that I use. And ClickUp is a very clean interface and it works well. And so once we got that down to a system and implemented it really it's mostly between me and my virtual assistant. I know at a glance where every project is. I know if it's with a freelancer. I know which freelancer it's with. I know when the next touch point in that project is, the next time I'm expecting it to come back to my desk for review, or if it's out for a client and when did it get sent to the client. So project tracking was really the big one. And it started with just saying, okay, this is the tool we're going to use. Let's look at how we can use this tool. Let's really document the process and identify the steps that we need. And so when we ironed all of that out, and that was a collaborative effort between me and my virtual assistant, Keely. And, we ironed all of that out and now it's just great, because used to it was, waking up at 3:00 in the morning worrying that something has fallen through the cracks because an email got married in my inbox, and now
that doesn't happen to anybody.
Right. Never. No business owners can relate to that. Not to say that nothing ever slips a little bit through the cracks anymore, of course, but having that particular tool in place and having a way that we manage client projects and know where they are in the process was a really, really helpful shift.
Yeah. And that's a massive problem that many or most businesses track. I mean, you've got whiteboards with notes all over them. You got sticky notes in everyone's office. And there's a million different ways to try to digitally handle that. And there's some incredibly complicated project managers and different tools out there. So finding something simple that works for your business is huge. That I think you kind of nailed. A lot of people put that off way too long before they jump on board with it.
I have also partnered with some different agencies here and there through the years, or kind of done some fill-in work on some copywriting or some editing. And sometimes I'm astounded at larger companies, larger organizations that just really don't have anything in place. It's like, oh, this project manager does it this way and that project manager does it that way. And I'm like, there's magic tools. I like the magic tools, and you have to find the one that's right for you. And that's what I tell people too. I have another side of my life through my business that is email marketing consulting.
Okay.
That I've worked in that industry as long as I've worked directly with my small businesses and small nonprofits. And it's always a question that comes up when like businesses are choosing an email marketing platform. It's, well, which one do people recommend? And it all comes back to what's important to you. Mm-hmm. So that's what I always tell people too with choosing a tool like that, whether it is a social media scheduling tool, if it's a project management tool, if it is a design tool. Identify what matters to you first, make a list, and then look at what's out there and evaluate them based on what matters to you. Because if you go out and you just say, oh, there's this thing and there's that thing, and you start looking at all these different platforms, first, after you've seen 2 demos, it all blurs together.
They're all same.
Second, you're going to come down with shiny object syndrome, and something's going to look really fancy, and you're going to decide that sounds like a great idea when really your business doesn't even need it. So that's one of my big things. It's like, okay, first identify what matters. So I really started with, on my CRM and on my project management tool, started with, what do I need it to do?
Yeah.
Like, what's most important that this tool do for me? And then let's go find the tools that do that, and then evaluate them on what matters most.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you mentioned a lot of these larger companies kind of just don't really seem to have it together. And I think that's because as a smaller company, we have to be lean. We have to be efficient. We can't have as much fat hanging around because that's, not going to work for us. And I don't think a lot of companies realize, even if they're a larger company, if you spend some time trying to be more efficient, that's money. That is just straight profit that you are losing. So I just thought that was interesting. Yeah. Nothing more than that. That was it. So you lived in St. Louis for nearly a decade, and then came back to Oklahoma. I've never asked you before. I'm curious what brought you back to Oklahoma.
So I lived in St. Louis. So I grew up in Oklahoma City, Bethany, and then in Oklahoma City, and went to University of Missouri, smack in the middle of the state, for school. And then when I graduated college, I said, okay, I know a lot of people in St. Louis. I'm going to go spread my wings in St. Louis for a little while. Lived there almost a decade. And then in 2010, I met my husband, now husband. So I met this guy named Matthew, who happened to be from Durant, Oklahoma.
All right.
So 2 Okies met each other in St. Louis. And then we got married. And we had not even been married a year. And we just sort of looked at each other and went one day and went, we're supposed to move back to Oklahoma now, aren't we? So we did. He was at a transition point in his career. I was pretty burnt out on the job I was doing. I knew that I was going to be looking for another job. And we were just decided that if we were both going to look for new jobs, we could do that, headed back home. So we've been back in Oklahoma since 2012. It's been great. So we see our families, regularly, get to watch our nieces and nephews grow up and spend time with our parents. And it's been really nice. It's been really nice to move back to Oklahoma City. It's hard to believe we've been back for more than a decade now, that I've now surpassed the time I lived in St. Louis with the time that I've lived in Oklahoma City as an adult.
Okay. So as you're thinking, did you start the company in St. Louis, or did you start it when you moved back here?
I started it here. So we moved back in 2012. Took me a while to find a position because I wanted the right position when I moved back. Plenty of people said to me, why don't you just start consulting? I was like, oh, no, I'm not ready. I don't really know anyone in Oklahoma. I haven't lived here in, 12 years since high school. I don't know anybody. I can't start my own business. Had all of that thought in my head of like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that. And so it took about 6 months for me to find a job. And I landed at a state agency position working in communications. Did not take long to discover that maybe state agency work was not really a good fit for me. And so in 2014, so I'd been there about a year and a half, worked with a great team of people, just some of the red tape, some of the just stuff, that comes with a state agency with a really large organization, was just not the right fit. And so in 2014, I decided it was time to take that plunge, and I resigned from my position, and I gave myself a month of kind of planning. I don't think I really wrote a business plan, but I wrote a lot of notes.
Yeah.
And I networked, and I decided what I was going to call this thing that I was going to do. And so I gave myself just a month to kind of just soak into, I'm starting this business. Let me create the basics for it. And just started kind of networking like crazy and talking to some nonprofits and saying, okay, this is a viable option, right? Like, I'm not crazy that I want to go consult with nonprofits on marketing. And even before I resigned my position, I actually went back to St. Louis, and I did what I called at the time my mentor tour. Okay. And so my husband was consulting. So we were living in Oklahoma City, but he was still working for a company in St. Louis. And so he was back there regularly. And so I would tag along on some of the trips. And so I lined up coffee and lunch with 4 other women business owners that I knew and said to them, I'm thinking about doing this. What advice do you have for someone who's about to take that plunge and start their own business? And I feel like that was a really valuable step because I got different nuggets of advice from each of them. These were people I knew from my career. Some I had worked with, some I had, one I had been a client of hers. So, one had been like a COO at a job I previously had and then had started her own business. One, I'd been a client of her email marketing agency. And I just talked to those women business owners and said, okay, tell me what you would tell yourself if you were starting all over.
Do you remember anything?
One of them definitely told me that I was underpricing when I told her what I was thinking about charging. She was like, no, up higher than that. You are worth more than that. A lot of them just said, find your why and follow it. And they were all very supportive. They were all absolutely supportive. And they're like, you're going to nail this. You're going to be great. So that little mentor tour was really important to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You knew from a young age you were going to own a business. You're in St. Louis, and it sounds like that wasn't a thought in your head until you moved back here.
Yeah.
And even knowing that you were going to at some point, people telling you that you should start it, you were still a little bit hesitant.
Yeah. There's always that voice in the back of your head that questions, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
And that's what I said plenty of times out loud. I remember having those conversations with my husband of like, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? He's like, the worst that happens is it doesn't work and you go find another job, and you've done that in multiple times before. And I know that you will be able to do that. He's like, but I don't have any doubts about whether or not this is going to work. So I had people cheering me on. I had people in my corner, which is important. Definitely have people in your corner when you start a business. But yeah, there's always that little bit of doubt. And then I think I was probably a year and a half in when I had that moment that I was like, it's really going to work, I'm sure there were little moments along the way, but I distinctly remember it was about a year and a half in where I was like, this is going to really work.
Do you remember what that moment was? Was it you just signed a new client, or was it just you were kind of reflecting? Do you recall?
I don't remember what else was around that. I just remember that that moment of, okay, I have this. I really can do that, just sort of that moment of affirmation.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it probably had something to do with new clients or referrals or revenue numbers or something. But I don't remember the exact scenario at this point.
But that's an amazing moment. I remember there are a couple of moments over, our growth and everything where something small and you're like, yes, like could be something huge, could be something small, but it's a huge win and encouragement. You still regularly have those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I realized, so we're in March as we're recording this. So May is coming, and this May is 9 years that I've been in business. Wow, and so I realized like a few months ago, like when it turned to this calendar year, I was like, oh, I'm like barely more than a year away from the 10-year mark. And that's like 5 years was a big milestone. 10 years is a really big milestone. So I'm already kind of thinking, okay, what do I do? Like, what party do I throw? What thing do I, like, how do I celebrate, right? Because 10 years is a big deal, especially, for small businesses. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but, there's the failure rate for small businesses is high. And I've had friends for whom their businesses didn't work out for one reason or another, or they decided it wasn't for them, and that's a perfectly valid choice too. If you get into the small business world and you decide, I really don't love running my own business, I'm going to go back and use my skills in another way. That's also a perfectly totally valid choice. Absolutely.
Yeah. I keep going because I'm too stubborn to quit.
Right. There's stubborn.
I'm not going to ever give up.
Stubbornness is a helpful trait in a small business owner sometimes. Yes.
I love it. Any just massive lessons where you're like, this has been kind of that big thing that's stuck in my head that you like to share. I mean, obviously we've already talked a little bit about that. And it's fine if not.
I don't know that there's anything else real big.
No. I love the fact that you were so resistant to starting the business. Because a lot of people, they decide, I'm going to do this. I don't like the way it's done elsewhere, or I can do it better. And they jump in. And the fact that you were having people to push you along, who could see the excellence, who knew you were going to do good. I just think that speaks volume, but you're such a humble, amazing person. I love that part of the story. All right. We're going to change a little bit here. I just got back I had to fly somewhere, and I know that you at one time traveled pretty frequently. And have you traveled much since the pandemic? Because I'm curious, if you have had to travel recently, do you have any really good travel tips for people who are maybe just starting to get back into traveling now that things are crazy? Do you have any like travel secrets that you have, little hacks you've done?
That's a really good question.
And I'm going to sit here until you think of one too. We're not going past this.
I have traveled recently. I did. We went to New York, late February, President's Day weekend. We went to New York. So, and then we go to St. Louis still periodically. My husband still works for a company in St. Louis, so we go there pretty regularly. So, I don't know that it's really pandemic related, but I'm a foodie a little bit too. We cook. We don't really eat out. Like we're like cook at home foodies. I take my own food to the airport. Yeah.
Obviously you're not taking like a grocery list. You take like snacks.
Yeah. Okay. Like if depending, we live in Oklahoma, and depending on what airline you're flying, you don't always get to fly direct somewhere from Oklahoma City, right? So often a travel day is many hours in airports and on airplanes and all of that. I'm also hypoglycemic, so making sure that I have regular food available is really important to me. No one wants to see me on a plane with my blood sugar crashing. It's not pretty for anyone. So food matters. Like if I'm traveling, like food is important. So when we went to New York, I actually, we had a really early flight. I think we left for the airport at 5 a.m. And then had like a 7 a.m. flight to New York City. So I know that I don't particularly love any of my breakfast options at the airport. So I meal prepped some sausage, egg, and cheese breakfast burritos the day before. And we popped them in the microwave, just in a, plastic to-go container, Tupperware or whatever, and popped them in the microwave on our way to the airport. And they were still plenty warm by the time we got through security. I bought coffee at the airport because they won't let me take that through security. So yeah, pack your snacks. Don't go hungry.
Yeah. So I've never thought about that before, just because I'm like, well, you can't take my daughter. This was the second time she ever flown, and there's so much going on. And of course, we've, telling her all these rules, and she forgets to empty her water bottle.
Yeah, it happens.
Which is chaos and stuff. So, you can't take water or liquids or anything more than 3 ounces. So I've never realized you can take food. They let you take food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, don't take yogurt.
Or frozen turkey.
Nut butters probably aren't recommended. There are certain things you might take that might get you looked at a little closer, depending on kind of how it shows up on the x-ray. Like I have a friend who has a story about packing banana bread in her carry-on, and every single time TSA wanted to look in her suitcase if there was a loaf of banana bread in her suitcase because it was a small square object. So, it just depends. But yeah, don't take anything that's liquid-ish. So don't take the yogurt, don't take any of that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'll take a sliced apple, I'll take a sandwich and some chips in my bag. I try not to do like nuts or nut butters, just out of respect for anybody on a plane that might have a nut allergy or anything major like that. So I try to kind of avoid any heavy allergens if I can, avoid the extra smelly foods too, if you can. But
please.
Sandwiches, breakfast burritos, any kind of wrapped bar is great. Fruit, apple, orange.
So all kinds of great information on this show. My tip was like, make sure your TSA pre-check.
I cannot recommend TSA pre-check enough.
It's like, that's obvious.
Yeah. If you travel more than 4 times a year, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
Best.
I don't know. Yeah. I feel like I do it so much, I forget. We're so used to it. Although when we did start traveling again after kind of a pandemic hiatus, we were really out of practice. The first time we went through security, my husband had forgotten that he'd taken his backpack on a road trip and had tossed like a multi-tool in the outside pocket. Thankfully, not a really nice one. It was just some giveaway multi-tool that he'd gotten somewhere. So they were like, you can walk back to your car, you can throw it away. And he's like, here, just add it to the fancy TSA collection of things. So we always, and I'm a pretty organized, detailed person. So I tend to have sort of like a packing checklist that I go through. Also, packing cubes are life-changing if you haven't used packing cubes.
No, I've never.
We do a lot of trips where we have multiple stops. So we're going to St. Louis for the St. Louis Cardinals home opener here in a few weeks. And well, actually, it's like the week after next. It's coming up rapidly. But on that trip to St. Louis, we'll be staying in 3 different places. So we have a hotel, and then we're staying with a family member, and we're staying with some friends. So packing cubes are great. We're road tripping, that one, not flying. Because then you can kind of pack for the phases of your trip.
Okay.
So it's like there's one cube that goes in this one house instead of hauling my whole suitcase for a week into a house for one night.
That's travel prep, like level 25. That's well above.
Yeah. I am prepared.
Nice, though.
I am prepared. Yes.
Good. All right. I do want to go back to something you said about the ebbs and flows and the stress of owning a business. Sometimes it's a big project. Sometimes it's just seasonal, but every business owner has those moments where things are just pressure cooking. Mm-hmm. How do you unwind or de-stress in the midst of that, or maybe even after it? What do you do?
I have a few strategies. My first and most important one is I opt for preemptive stress relief. Okay. So I try to stay pretty consistent with some physical activity. For me, that means swimming laps, working in the garden, or going for a walk in my neighborhood. I almost spelled the word walk because I can't say the word walk in my house in front of my dogs. So I get really used to spelling that word.
I wish you had.
Yeah. So I try to manage my stress on the front end so that it doesn't build as much. That's not always possible. But I try to get to the gym and swim, try to go for some walks with my husband, and then try to work in the garden a little bit and just get out in nature. So that's really important for me. And then there are those days where things just go crazy and there's no time and you feel like you can't take a break. So even on those days, I try to just go sit. I work from home, so I have this luxury that I can go lie in my bedroom and turn out the lights and just breathe for 10 minutes. I don't really use like a meditation app or anything like that. I know some people who do, but I like to just go set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes and turn out the light and silence my phone so nothing's buzzing and going off except my timer, and breathe in the dark and just kind of let my system downshift. I find on the really, really stressful days where it's just, putting out fires, that's really helpful. And it just helps me kind of shift into that next phase, like whatever it is I'm doing next. Sometimes I'll do that at the end of my day, because I'm just kind of wired from the day and from getting everything done. And then I need to transition back into life. Mm-hmm. Maybe I have a meeting to go to, something like that, in the evening, or I just want to kind of chill out from the day and shift into home life. So that's another piece. And then I find a lot of joy and stress relief in cooking and baking. So sometimes I will go bake a batch of cookies and I will feel better.
I keep waiting for one of those batch of cookies to arrive on my doorstep at some point.
One of these days.
Yeah, Christmas, maybe I'll see something.
Yeah.
I always try to think, these big ways to de-stress. But I love the fact that you have found just take a moment and decompress and move on. That's important.
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, we are coming close to an end, and we didn't even get to talk about softball yet. So we'll have to save that for next time.
OKC Spark. Oklahoma City has professional softball starting this year.
Nope, I said we didn't have time for it. Okay, so
OKC Spark.
One thing we always like to ask is, of course, being sponsored by Your IT, we've got to ask something here. One piece of technology that you can't live without.
I mean, at this point, it's more software technology, but it's my project management system. I'd be lost without my project management system. I would not be able to keep track of every client project in my head and where it is. So That's my can't live without.
That's a new one. Great.
Really?
Yeah.
Is everyone else saying
phone?
Cell phone?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd struggle with that too. Yeah. I do a lot of things on my phone, but no, yeah, it's the software piece for me in the project management system.
Perfect. All right. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, if they want to learn more about what you do, how you can help, or just kind of reach out, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah. Best way probably is to hit up my website, storypathcommunications.com. So that's communications with an S at the end. You can also find us on Facebook and on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn or find StoryPath Communications on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you for joining. We'll do it again soon.
The Oklahoma Business Show is proudly sponsored by Your IT, managed IT services and cybersecurity for Oklahoma businesses. Are you a business leader who's frustrated with your current technology, worried about cyber threats, and too damn busy to handle it yourself? Your IT makes IT easy, with clear and transparent pricing and the ability to customize services to fit your unique business needs. Visit yourit.com to learn more about our services and schedule a chat to find out how we can help you. That's yourit.com. You deserve better IT.